In 2018, the Trump administration launched a wave of tariffs, primarily targeting China. This move was part of a broader strategy to reshape the global trade landscape and assert American economic dominance. The administration believed that by imposing these tariffs, they could force other countries to negotiate more favorable trade deals for the United States. This marked a significant shift in U.S. trade policy, which had previously focused on promoting free trade and reducing barriers. The new approach was more protectionist, aiming to shield American industries from foreign competition and revive domestic manufacturing. The stated goal was to protect American jobs and reduce the trade deficit. By making imported goods more expensive, the administration hoped to encourage consumers and businesses to buy American-made products, thereby boosting domestic production and employment. Trump argued that unfair trade practices were harming the U.S. economy. He claimed that countries like China were engaging in practices such as intellectual property theft, currency manipulation, and state subsidies for their industries, which gave them an unfair advantage in the global market. He imposed tariffs on billions of dollars worth of goods from China, the European Union, and other trading partners. These tariffs covered a wide range of products, from steel and aluminum to electronics and consumer goods. This ignited a trade war with global implications. Countries affected by the tariffs retaliated with their own tariffs on American goods, leading to a tit-for-tat escalation that disrupted international trade and created uncertainty in global markets. These tariffs had a ripple effect across the world. They not only affected the countries directly involved but also had broader consequences for global supply chains, investment decisions, and economic growth. They disrupted supply chains and increased costs for businesses and consumers. Companies that relied on imported materials and components faced higher costs, which they often passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices. The impact was particularly pronounced for emerging economies like the BRICS nations. These countries, which include Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, were deeply integrated into the global trading system and heavily dependent on exports. These nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, faced unique challenges and opportunities. While some sectors benefited from reduced competition, others struggled with the loss of access to key markets and increased costs for imported goods. Their responses varied depending on their economic structures and relationships with the U.S. Some sought to negotiate exemptions or new trade deals, while others looked to diversify their trade partnerships and reduce their reliance on the American market. The Trump administration's tariff strategy was controversial. Supporters argued that it was a necessary step to address long-standing trade imbalances and protect American industries, while critics contended that it was a blunt instrument that caused more harm than good. Critics argued that it was counterproductive and harmful to the global economy. They pointed out that tariffs are essentially taxes on consumers, leading to higher prices for goods and services and reducing overall economic welfare. They pointed to the fact that tariffs are essentially taxes on consumers. This means that the burden of the tariffs ultimately falls on American households, who have to pay more for everyday items. Businesses and consumers in the U.S. ultimately bear the cost of these tariffs. Small businesses in particular found it challenging to absorb the higher costs, leading to reduced profitability and, in some cases, closures. Despite these criticisms, the Trump administration maintained that its actions were necessary to protect American interests. They argued that the long-term benefits of a more balanced trade relationship would outweigh the short-term costs. The tariffs remained in place for much of Trump's presidency, leaving a lasting impact on global trade dynamics. The legacy of these policies continues to influence trade negotiations and economic strategies around the world as countries adapt to a new era of trade relations. China, the world's second-largest economy, found itself at the center of the trade war. This conflict, which began in 2018, saw the United States and China imposing tariffs on each other's goods, leading to a significant economic standoff. The trade war was not just about tariffs, it was a battle for economic supremacy and technological dominance. The U.S. imposed tariffs on a wide range of Chinese goods, from electronics to machinery. These tariffs were intended to pressure China into changing its trade practices, which the U.S. claimed were unfair. The tariffs affected billions of dollars worth of goods, disrupting supply chains and increasing costs for businesses and consumers alike. This had a significant impact on the Chinese economy. Growth slowed and businesses faced uncertainty. Factories saw reduced orders, and many workers feared for their jobs. The ripple effects were felt across various sectors, from manufacturing to technology. The Chinese government had to step in with measures to stabilize the economy. China retaliated with tariffs of its own on U.S. products. These countermeasures targeted American agricultural products, automobiles, and other goods. The aim was to exert pressure on the U.S. by hitting key industries, particularly those in states that were politically significant. The trade war forced China to rethink its economic strategy. Policymakers in Beijing had to consider new ways to sustain growth and reduce vulnerability to external shocks. This included looking at how to boost domestic consumption and innovation. It accelerated efforts to reduce dependence on the U.S. market. China began to focus more on its internal market, encouraging its citizens to buy more domestically produced goods. This shift was part of a broader strategy to create a more self-sufficient economy. China focused on boosting domestic consumption and fostering innovation. Investments in research and development increased, with a particular emphasis on high-tech industries such as artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and renewable energy. The goal was to become a global leader in these fields. It also sought to strengthen trade ties with other countries. China signed new trade agreements and participated in international trade summits to diversify its trading partners. This was part of a broader effort to build a more resilient and diversified economic network. This included deepening its engagement with the Belt and Road Initiative. The initiative aimed to enhance global trade routes and infrastructure, connecting China with countries across Asia, Europe, and Africa. It was a strategic move to expand China's influence and economic reach. Despite the challenges, China remained resilient. The country leveraged its vast domestic market and technological prowess to weather the storm. Chinese companies adapted to the new environment, finding ways to innovate and stay competitive. It leveraged its vast domestic market and technological prowess. The focus on technology and innovation paid off, with Chinese tech companies making significant strides in various fields. This helped to offset some of the negative impacts of the trade war. China continued to rise as a global economic power. The country's infrastructure, from high-speed trains to modern financial markets, showcased its progress and ambition. The trade war, while challenging, did not derail China's long-term growth trajectory. However, the trade war highlighted vulnerabilities in its export-oriented growth model. The reliance on exports made China susceptible to external shocks, prompting a re-evaluation of its economic strategies. Diversification became a key focus. It also underscored the need for China to diversify its trading partners and reduce its reliance on the U.S. By building stronger relationships with other countries, China aimed to create a more balanced and sustainable economic future. The trade war, while a significant challenge, ultimately pushed China to innovate and adapt in ways that could strengthen its position in the global economy. India, a rising economic power, also felt the heat of Trump's tariffs. The U.S. imposed tariffs on Indian steel and aluminum exports. It also revoked India's preferential trade status under the Generalized System of Preferences, or GSP. This program provided duty-free access to the U.S. market for certain Indian goods. India responded with retaliatory tariffs on U.S. products. These tariffs targeted agricultural goods, motorcycles, and other items. India also sought to diversify its export markets. It looked to strengthen trade ties with countries like the European Union and Japan. The trade tensions with the U.S. came at a time when India was already grappling with an economic slowdown. The tariffs further strained U.S.-India relations. However, they also provided an impetus for India to pursue greater economic self-reliance. India focused on strengthening its domestic manufacturing capabilities and promoting innovation. The government launched initiatives like Make in India to attract foreign investment and boost domestic production. Brazil, Latin America's largest economy, experienced a mixed impact from the trade war. The trade tensions between the United States and China created a ripple effect that reached far beyond the two superpowers, affecting economies around the globe. Brazil, with its vast resources and strategic position in global trade, found itself both benefiting and suffering from these international disputes. On the one hand, Brazil benefited from increased demand for its agricultural exports. The country's vast soybean fields became a crucial asset as China, facing hefty tariffs on U.S. soybeans, turned to Brazil as an alternative supplier. This shift in trade dynamics provided a significant boost to Brazil's agricultural sector, leading to increased production and higher revenues for farmers. China, facing tariffs on U.S. soybeans, turned to Brazil as an alternative supplier. This new demand led to a surge in exports, with Brazilian ports bustling with activity as ships loaded with soybeans set sail for China. The increased trade not only benefited farmers, but also created jobs and stimulated economic activity in port cities. This boosted Brazil's agricultural sector. Farmers invested in new equipment and expanded their operations to meet the growing demand. The agricultural boom also had a positive impact on related industries, such as transportation and logistics, further contributing to economic growth. On the other hand, Brazil's industrial sector faced challenges. The imposition of U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum exports hit Brazilian producers hard. Factories that relied on exporting these metals found themselves struggling to compete in the global market, leading to layoffs and reduced production. U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum exports hurt Brazilian producers. The increased costs and reduced access to the U.S. market forced many companies to cut back on operations, resulting in economic hardship for workers and their families. The industrial sector, which had been a cornerstone of Brazil's economy, faced significant setbacks. Additionally, the global economic slowdown triggered by the trade war dampened demand for Brazilian exports. As countries around the world grappled with economic uncertainty, the demand for Brazilian goods declined, leading to a surplus of unsold products and further straining the economy. This highlighted Brazil's reliance on commodity exports and the need for greater economic diversification. The trade war exposed the vulnerabilities of an economy heavily dependent on a few key exports, underscoring the importance of developing other sectors to ensure long-term stability and growth. The Brazilian government adopted a pragmatic approach. Recognizing the challenges and opportunities presented by the trade war, officials sought to navigate the complex landscape by fostering new trade relationships and exploring alternative markets for Brazilian products. It sought to capitalize on opportunities in agricultural markets while mitigating the negative impacts on its industrial sector. Initiatives were launched to support farmers and boost agricultural exports, while efforts were made to protect and revitalize the industrial sector through innovation and investment. Brazil also engaged in negotiations with the U.S. to resolve trade disputes. Diplomatic efforts aimed at reducing tariffs and improving trade relations were prioritized, with the goal of creating a more favorable environment for Brazilian exports and fostering economic cooperation between the two nations. However, the trade war underscored the vulnerability of emerging economies like Brazil to external shocks. The fluctuations in global trade and economic policies highlighted the need for resilience and adaptability in the face of international uncertainties. It also highlighted the need for Brazil to reduce its dependence on commodity exports and diversify its economy. By investing in technology, innovation, and new industries, Brazil can build a more robust and resilient economy capable of weathering future global challenges.